All attendees are in
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our School on Wheels workshop today, Tutoring Solutions, Advice and Tips to Suit Your Students' Needs. My name is Amanda Carr, and I'm the Regional Specialist at School on Wheels. And I have with me Allison Maldonado, our Skid Row Learning Center Coordinator, who will be answering questions submitted in advance of the broadcast. We will also accept questions at any time, so simply type in your questions into the question pane and press send. We'll choose the order of questions and read them out loud. For purposes of sound quality, all participants are currently muted. You may also wish to use headphones for better sound. Allison, the Skid Row Learning Center Regional Coordinator, began her teaching career as a community college mentor for non-traditional students such as single mothers, first-generation college students, and disabled persons. After graduating from UCLA with a degree in English literature and composition, Allison worked as a special education teacher for 5 years. As a teacher, Allison worked with students living with autism, emotional disturbance, learning disabilities, speech and language impairment, and various other disabilities. Thank you so much, Allison, for coming by today to answer some questions. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hi, everybody. Like she said, my name is Allison. Around the Learning Center, I'm introduced as Miss Allison, so you hear that a lot. I'm here today to present a workshop to help out the tutors. We actually started this, the purpose of this workshop was to help out the tutors with personalized questions. So a lot of times they come asking with questions that suit their specific student, and I'm here to help you guys utilize all those tips and to learn how to adapt them to fit all the different strategies and students that you'll be working with. So just to give you a little bit more background on myself, like Amanda said, I worked with special education students. I was actually teaching a 12th grade class of 12 special education boys. They were all with emotional disturbance or autism. So it was basically a big class full of bullies. And we decided that we were going to give back to the community. So we started a project where we received money from the kids at school, and we got donations, and we went to Staples with the students and we bought school supplies. And when we picked up the supplies, we then came to School on Wheels and dropped off the donations. That's just one example of how we turned one idea into multiple different lessons. So for example, when we came up with the idea, there was lots of brainstorming going on and a lot of social skills in terms of talking about the steps we need to do in the project. The kids had to practice speaking to each other about how to present the project. We had to do math to figure out how much money we raised. We had to do math to figure out what items we could buy. And this project lasted a couple months. So we took one idea and you can expand it into many, many different other things. So that's kind of ideas of what we're going to be talking about today. When I was going over the questions that were presented, I noticed a couple themes that were coming up a lot. So I want to just go over that real quick. We wanted to talk a lot about motivation today, how to motivate students academically in terms of being even interested in doing the work and why they have to do the work and seeing that connection to why they need to do that. So we're going to talk about growth mindset and how to motivate your students in order to get them to do the work and to feel connected and invested in the work. We're going to talk about how you're going to connect with your students socially and emotionally. What I mean about this is that we want to find a connection to the students in a way that they're going to want to connect to you socially, which means they're going to want to talk to you. They're going to want to say things to you. They're going to figure out ways to get excited to speak to you and what they want to talk about. Emotionally, this isn't we're necessarily talking about a therapeutic session. We're talking about where the student comes to you and feels comfortable talking to you, just feeling that emotional bond where they're happy to see you. That's the kind of emotional stuff we're talking about, just connecting on a slight emotional level. We're not asking you to sit there and talk about the student's past and figure out why they're sad. We don't want you to figure out why they're feeling the way they are. Just figure out what they need at that moment to feel happy or to feel a different way than what they're feeling. One thing I want to remind you, a big theme that we're going to be addressing a lot is everything that I'm going to be talking about can be adapted to fit all ages. So something, just changing the visual aspect of a worksheet can completely adapt the age level you're working with. So I'm going to be showing you actual examples of worksheets and visuals and posters that you can use with the students. And please know that every single one of these, just changing the coloring or the font can change the grade level of what you're working with. I'll also be pointing out along the way which grade level will work best with which activities. So if, for example, I'm talking about reading comprehension, I'll mention activities that'll work best with elementary school and activities that'll work best for teens. So please keep that in mind when you're listening to kind of figure out which method will work best for your group that you're working with. One thing we're also going to be talking about is hidden curriculum. This is one of my favorite things because it really boosts everyone's confidence when they're working. To really realize that everything you're doing has some sort of curriculum in the background is really going to help you find what you're working on with the students. Hidden curriculum could be something as simple as the students sitting down and taking out their supplies. That right there is teaching them a lesson to be prepared. It's something that they're going to need in the future. I mean, when I came into this workshop, I didn't walk in with a Post-it ready to go. I walked in with my notebook, some notes, maybe some pens, water, different things that I would need. And those were lessons that I learned in school. When you take a test, you take your pencils, you take erasers, you make sure to eat breakfast. And these are things that you're going to want to realize that there is a lesson in everything you're doing. It might be hidden and it might not be obvious, but it's going to be worth doing with your student. We want to definitely share and talk about stories of attempts and successes. I'm going to use the word attempts a lot and tries because I don't really like to use the word failure or errors. It's basically ways to express your success, how you achieved or accomplished something in your life. And I'm going to be telling you stories of things that worked for us, things that didn't work, and what we had to do to figure out the way they work. And I want this to be a reciprocal conversation. So when you're talking to your student, I will openly admit to my students when I mess up. I will tell them, you know, I made a mistake, I need to fix this. Or I'm teaching a student something and I realize I found a better way to explain it. I might say, you know what I just said, I thought of something better. So being able to reciprocate to your students that you have errors, that you're learning with them, and that you have stories from your past that they can relate to is going to be a great way to go back and connect to the students socially and emotionally and motivate them academically, because if you dealt with it and now you're sitting here teaching them, that's a visual motivation right then and there that they're going to be able to see. One thing that I also want to address is that the things that I'm going to be talking about can all be turned into extended projects. So what I mean by that is it could be something you do one day, and for group tutoring sessions where you see the students multiple times, these projects can all be extended. So you might plan a project for one group tutoring session, and at the end of that session, it'll give you ideas for what to do next week and the week after. So I don't want people thinking that every week you're going to need to be creative and think of a whole new project. You can take one of these ideas and use the students and their feedback to extend it, modify it, change it, and to adapt it as you guys see fit as you go along. All right. So what we're going to do now is I have actually taken questions direct from people during the registration, and I've adapted the wording to fit multiple questions. So the first thing that we're going to address is a situation that was brought up. It says, 7th grade student who is very bright but quite behind. The work is all over the place and trying to not do random worksheets. So when I first read this, the first thing I thought of was the student very behind. When a student is in a homeless situation, they are in transition continually. One thing that tends to be forgotten is that when a student shifts schools, they're shifting curriculum as well. So if you're in school and you're learning fractions, all of a sudden you're moving to a new school, you get to your new math class, and they're already in dividing fractions. You know, they've already skipped how to add fractions and how to multiply fractions. You've now lost those little gaps just because you've changed schools. Add on to that, transitioning schools also puts you behind a couple months because of the emotional learning you're doing now and just the overall transition that you're trying to make. So that's one thing that I want to definitely remind you guys of, is the transitions that the students are dealing with are going to be a big part in falling behind. They could be very, very bright, but without those foundations and bricks to fill in those gaps, then they are going to end up feeling that they're quite behind. All right, so here's a couple things we're going to do to fix that and to help out. Assessments. You want to help with assessing the students. Where are these gaps? What are they missing? So an example would be if your student's having trouble with reading comprehension, do they know the things they should be looking for? The who, the why, the what, the where? Are they aware of those things that they need to be addressing when they're reading? Do they know parts of speech? Are they recognizing when we're talking about an action a character's doing versus their emotion that they're feeling? So just knowing if they know those small little gaps makes a big deal. An example for math, if the student can't divide, maybe they don't even know how to multiply. If you don't know how to add, you're definitely going to have a struggle with subtracting. So just if you notice little things, such as the student might be struggling with subtracting, give them an addition problem. Switch it up real quick to see how they're doing with that addition problem. If they do it really easily, then give them a step up from that addition problem. Add more digits, maybe add more lines, throw in some regrouping. If they're still doing good with that, then start off with the simplest subtraction problem and then add on double digits. So you might start with 5 minus 3. If they can do that, great. Now let's skip to 15 minus 3. Okay, if they have a little bit of struggle with that, then we might have trouble with place value. They might not know they need to borrow. So if you can't borrow from a problem such as 12 minus 10 or 12 minus 18, then you're definitely going to struggle with any other type of subtraction. So being able to put that worksheet aside and double check different methods to see what the student can and cannot do is going to be a big help. I'm also now going to show you a little assessment chart that I've used with students before. Like I said, these charts can be adapted for all ages. So this one looks very much so for elementary school students. I've actually given this to middle school and high school students, but I just take off the pictures. So then they just see the words, and I'll let them decide if they exceed, if they're proficient, if they're developing. So just even taking off the pictures changes the grade level of that worksheet. One thing that's very important when you're assessing students, observing. Observe what they're doing. Observe what they can and cannot do and what they're thinking when they're doing it. Are they hesitating a lot? Did it come naturally to them to answer that? When we're doing assessments, it's best to also self-assess, meaning the student assesses themselves. Ask the student, when you're doing this problem, how did you feel? Did you feel like you could do it all by yourself? Did you feel like you needed a little bit of help? Did you feel like you just didn't understand anything? Ask the student how they're feeling. One thing that I get out of that a lot is students might assess themselves like, oh, I could do this. I got this. This is really easy for me. But they might not be able to know how to do it. They just think it comes easy to them, so they'll ignore it. They might not see the struggle with it, so that brings them down a lot more when they think it comes easy, and then all of a sudden it doesn't. That connects with that growth mindset mentality that we're trying to connect with them. We want to motivate them academically. So helping them see their self-assessment, helping them see that it's okay that sometimes you need help because you're starting to understand. If you go to this area right here and say, you could do this by yourself, you might make a little bit of mistakes, but you got through it. So this actually can also help you with teaching proper wording to the students and getting that connection in there as well. I will actually use this as well and tell the student, I'm still developing my skills. I need help to understand this as well. So being able to be confident in expressing your limitations will allow the student to self-assess themselves more accurately as well, which is very helpful. If your student's falling behind, you want to do things to help them catch up, and which is definitely going to be utilizing age-appropriate activities. This is where we're going to get creative. This is where you utilize what makes the students happy. What you have observed during your assessments keeps the students focused. Examples. When I'm working with older students and they are low with their reading level, there's one thing that you always want to remember is that their grade level might not match their ability level. A student might be in 8th grade, but their language arts reading ability level might be 5th grade. You don't want to go and grab a 5th grade book and bring it to an 8th grader because they might not be as excited reading Judy Moody or The Magic Tree House. So what we'll do is we'll utilize stuff that's more age appropriate. Song lyrics are really, really helpful. The kids know the song, so they know the words. They know what the rapper or the artist is saying, so they're able to look at the lyrics and get that connection. A younger student might utilize sight words to help with language arts. Sight words are a picture and a word. A picture of a pizza with the word pizza underneath. This might not really work for older students. They might feel very childish doing that. So that's where you're going to utilize the song lyrics. They've heard the lyrics before. They know what the words sound like. Show them what they're supposed to look like now. Help them understand that connection. You can even ask them, what does that lyric mean? And if they're not able to explain it, you then look up the words in the dictionary to help them explain the lyric. You can even use that for context. So if the story is a love song about, good old Taylor Swift, she's always talking about breaking up with people. If she uses a word about feeling disconnected and the student doesn't know what that means, you can connect it to breakups and use that to really, really relate to the students and have them feel that connection. Best part about that, you find out who the student loves to listen to. Utilize that artist. So then they are bringing in their own interest right away. You can also utilize high-low articles. What we mean by that is they're high interest but low level. Magazine articles work really, really well for this. So for girls, I will literally go on 17.com and pull up some articles because the reading level is going to be younger to catch the reader's attention. It's meant to be an easy read so that you can enjoy it, but it's meant to also keep their attention. You don't necessarily always have to get a nonfiction story that's going to be the life cycle of whales. A teenager might not understand that, but they might really get excited to learn the process of writing down song lyrics, or maybe the process of being nominated for Homecoming Queen. Something like that can really grab their interest. So you want to definitely think of what you can do to help the students connect. This also works for math. One thing that we kind of worked on a lot when I worked with special ed students was catalog math. And it can also be used as menu math for the younger students. It is literally shopping. I will get a catalog and bring it to the students and say, all right, let's pretend that we have this much money. What can we buy? And it really helps the students connect to real world situations. It helps them find that connection to why this is even important. If you want to buy these things, if you want to own these things in the future, you need to understand now how to budget. Being able to sit down with the student and have a menu in front of them and say, like, this is McDonald's. If we had a $5 gift card to McDonald's, what could we get? Something like that, and being able to show the student that this applies to their real life. I remember when I was in school and you would get those word problems that's like, Sally went to the supermarket and bought 67 cantaloupes, and each cantaloupe was 25 cents. How much did she spend? My first reaction is, why in the world does Sally need this many cantaloupes? I don't care how much they cost, because right now I need to know why she's using this many cantaloupes. But if the word problem said something like, Allison walked into a comic book store and she wanted to buy 50 comic books, and each comic book cost 75 cents. How much money would I need? I would have been all over figuring that one out. I would have really wanted to know how much money I would need. So that's where it's going to come into rewording those math problems, pushing away the worksheet that the student has in front of them, and just utilizing the numbers and the foundation and rewording it to help that student. I have a student right now who's in physics, and she just does not get, she's afraid of heights. So having to think of standing on a mountain and dropping something off, it's just not happening. It's not because she just doesn't want to think about it. And thinking of those little things really, really stifles her. So we change it up. We'll tell her, all right, you're at the bottom floor of the mall and you need to get to the 5th floor and you want to throw something up to your friend. And we'll change it around. Pretend your friend's up there at the top of the mountain and she needs to get something to you at the bottom of the mall. How are you going to make that happen? That visual right there is completely going to change the student's mindset and really make them want to connect to what they're learning. Even changing it up for boys. Basketball. If you're standing at the top of the net, and you need to throw it to your partner down there, how far back does the person need to stand? That's all physics. That's all math. And all you have to do is take the work they already have and reword it to make it more comfortable and more adaptable for them. All right. This next one actually was invented by a student, so I was really excited to share this one. He calls it his Ketchup Book. So what this is a notebook that we have for the student. He recognized the gaps that he had in his education, and he's a visual learner. Not a big fan of work flashcards because they were easy for him to lose, so we wrote a Ketchup Book. Every page in the book was a different reference guide. We utilized many, many different motivational quotes, motivational speeches, different things that he would come up with, and basically wrote a little mini book of the different things that worked for him. Right here I have some visuals. So here's an example. If your student's having trouble with subtraction, I went online and typed in subtraction help and clicked on images, and this was literally one of the first 5 pictures that popped up. A cute little poem with visuals that helps the student remember. The great part about this, it says more on top, no need to stop. So it's already telling you, like, you don't need to stop. We need to keep going. You're good. Keep doing this problem. It helps the student because these little rhymes will help them in class. My favorite part about this subtraction poem is that when we did this in the student's book, he actually wrote the word subtraction in Hebrew, which was really cool. And the book was able to adapt to any student. It worked out really well. The students loved it. And this was something I did with my special ed kids. So when I came to School on Wheels, we had a tutoring student make the poster and put it up on our wall. And it's been utilized ever since. So group tutoring sessions. If you have a student who makes up one of these, put it on the wall. Make them feel proud of their work, and you're now teaching the rest of the group tutors how to utilize different strategies. Next one is a language art example. Parts of speech. This would be a good example for older students because you really are breaking it down into a formal professional sheet. They have the different ones, the easier ones on top, such as the nouns, moving all the way down to prepositions. You don't even need to include all of these in there. My favorite part is the verb, because for verbs, I don't let the student write the word down until they actually do the verb to show them. So if it says skip, I will make the kids skip around the room for them to write the word down so that they get a visual of what it means. Adverb, skip quickly. And then I'll have them do it faster. They get that visual of what's going on. The best part about this, it's goofy. I will admit it's really silly. You're going to be laughing a lot. It's going to keep the kids' interest involved. And the best part, I've actually been doing this with students, and I've had other kids in the room, and they want to know what's going on. They want to know why the student all of a sudden is hopping rapidly. You know, they want to know why this is happening, so then that student then gets to explain, oh, I'm showing my tutor how to rapidly use verbs, or different things like that, and it really gets the kids excited. Best part is the Ketchup Book then becomes their own. It's adapted to each student, and you can utilize that as a study guide in the future, and the kid takes that with them from school to school, despite not having anything else or study guides that the teacher might have left behind for them. All right. One thing I actually like to mention on these as well, for younger students, when we're doing these, they're really helpful because you can utilize patterns, colors, and it holds everybody accountable. When a student invests their time in making this worksheet, they're going to want to reference it. They're going to remember that it exists. If they get a worksheet from their teacher, like a multiplication chart that 15 other kids have and they all look the same, theirs isn't going to matter as much because the teacher could just make them another copy. Personalized ones are going to help them feel accountable, hold themselves accountable, and very, very proud of themselves as well. All right. Next question we had. My student does not want to engage and often comes in with no homework. She keeps answers brief and seems disinterested. I love this topic because everybody deals with this. I've never had a student that comes in every day full of interest and ready to go. Everybody, adults and kids, are going to have those days where they come in just feeling like not in the mood. So we're going to work on how to fix stuff like this. All right. First thing we're going to do is we're going to get the kid a planner. This is going to work for all age levels. It might sound a little silly to give a kindergartner a planner, but my kindergartners have planners. And the cool part about it, here's an example. This is what we use for our kindergartners. It's a simple little homework chart. It has Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We don't worry about Saturdays and Sundays. It's one line. So for little kids, all we have to do is fill in math worksheet, learn adding, work on A, stuff like that. Nice and easy. Older kids, we can change up the picture and actually change each chart. Could be for the day. So it could say homework chart for the day of. And instead of saying Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it could say math, science, English. And each student, that student can then write down their assignments for each class. Best part about this also, this is when I tell the kid, prove it. Right here on top, first thing I ever said to a kid, as soon as they say, I have no homework, prove it. Bring out your journal. Bring out your planner. On this planner right here that we have as an example, it has boxes at the end. Show me the teacher's initial where they said you wrote no homework, and they are confirming that with their teacher's initial. That's always a big thing to help, because if the teacher is able to confirm, then you know that it's valid. One other thing that I like to point out, let me double check. One thing I'll also have with the prove it, if the student says they don't have homework, they could even fill in no homework, but they could write down what they did in class. So for this one part, something very important to me is to ask the kid, well, if you don't have homework, what did you do in class today? That's definitely going to help you utilize and figure out what to be working on. So I will even tell the kid, okay, if you don't have homework, write down 2 things you did in class today. Okay, we did math. Show me one of the math problems. Write it down. And now you have an example of what they did, and you can expand upon that. The one thing I also like to utilize this for is not just academic use. I'll use this for social use as well. So I'll have the student write down stuff that they did as well during the day. And you can also reference this to go back and address those things that happened with the student. An example would be, if on Monday the student comes in and says that they have a homework packet, great, that section right there is going to say homework packet. Tuesday, they might say, oh no, the teacher didn't give us homework because we're still working on the packet. Okay, then maybe that day the student could have written down something for you that says, in class, reading comprehension, or in class, read green eggs and ham. So this way, when you see your student on Wednesday, you now know Monday they got a homework packet. Let me see this packet. Tuesday, they did this in class. Let's talk about that. And you can address everything throughout the week. The social use comes in where a student might put on Friday, no homework, teacher said have a great weekend. All right, cool. What are you going to do this weekend to have a great weekend? That's going to drive up some conversation. I might even throw in there on Thursday, if I see my student Wednesday. On Thursday, I might give them an assignment ahead of time and say, Thursday, I want you to introduce yourself to a new friend tomorrow. You can plan ahead into the planner and give them things to do. It's a great way to help with deadlines, holding the kids accountable, and staying connected into their lives as well. I've even used these charts to communicate with the teacher. So when you have those issues like we just previously addressed where there's big gaps in the education, I might write on the planner on Wednesday. I met with student. We worked on this so that we have to do something else because student was unable to do multiplication. We worked on subtraction. Communicate with your teacher and help them out. When I go back to prove it, I'll tell the students, show me some samples of your class notes so that I can shape what we're learning in here. Show me worksheets from your backpack. Bust out your backpack. What are previous things you've gotten good grades on? If you got a good grade on it, what can we do next? Utilize what the students have to help you shape what you're working on next. All right. Next, in order to talk about keeping them engaged and disinterested, I am really big on open-ended questions. I am not a big fan of asking questions where the answer could ever be yes or no. That's always going to set yourself up for really small conversation. Open-ended questions are something where I will straight up tell the kid, tell me a story about what happened within the first hour of school today. Tell me what happened as soon as you got back to class after lunch. And then you build upon that. That's when you utilize your strategies with the student and continue to talk to them. Build onto that conversation. Set an example with your response. Here's a great story I had with a student. They came in and I said, tell me what you did when you went after lunch. I went back to class. Okay, when you got back to class, what did you do? I went to my desk. Okay, well, after you did when you sat at the desk, what was your next assignment? I don't remember. Okay, well, let me set you an example. Today when I got back from lunch, I went from my desk, and as I was walking to the desk, I realized that I had to go do something, and I was thinking about how good my lunch was, and what did you eat for lunch? Have them start talking about that. Set the example. Answer in a way that you would want them to answer in order for them to see an example of how you want the response to be. Also, you're definitely going to want to set the atmosphere. I almost put set the tone, but I felt that sounded a little awkward. You want to set the atmosphere. Let the kid know this is a really chill environment. I'm going to be silly here. Don't sit up and kind of keep your hands crossed in front of you and ask, tell me about the one thing you did today. Chill. Sit back in your seat. Smile when you ask them. Uncross your arms. Sit back. Look relaxed and just say, all right, tell me something good that happened today. All right, what made you laugh a lot? Something to help them feel relaxed so that it's not like a question or answer and it's another test. It's just a conversation. When you're working with older kids, I use a lot of mini debates. So I'll actually debate with my students to get the conversation going. I had a student who came in and said, oh, my teacher was being absolutely ridiculous today. I don't want to talk about it. She was just being dumb. And I said, oh, well, what did she do that was so dumb? And right away, well, she was just getting mad because everybody was yelling, so she made us all sit down quietly. And I was like, so you're saying the teacher's dumb because she wanted the classroom quiet? And he's like, no, she was just dumb because. I'm like, well, okay, well, let's readdress this. And it really gets the student to kind of argue back and forth in an appropriate manner, getting the kid to question and get more interested in the topic. You are engaging them by showing them you're engaged. By showing them that you're really trying to figure out what they're talking and what they're feeling, they're going to want to help you understand and build in that engagement. In here, I added in bracket systems. What I mean by this is when you're working with older students, it's really hard to get students interested. So boys love sports. A lot of boys love sports, and a lot of boys love competition. So we've utilized bracket systems where we'll say, all right, this week we're going to debate who's better, Batman versus Superman. And this is how we're starting the topic today. And then next week, at the end of the week, we've decided, all right, Batman's better, Batman won this week. Next week, all right, Batman won last week, who's winning this week? Batman versus the Flash. All right, now that's the new topic. You're extending a project over and over. You're building interest in the topic, and you're keeping the kids interested. That alone right there is going to set the atmosphere to build on and set the example for better things happening. All right. This right here is one of my favorite games. I actually play this with my little cousins and my nephews, and it's going to get any age level interested. You get a bag of candy. Any candy will do, and the kid reaches in and grabs one, and whichever one they grab out, you play a game. So M&Ms. If you pull out a red M&M, for every red M&M, they have to say one thing that makes them happy in the circle. If you say it, you get to eat it. You just earned it. Um, I'll even have kids pull out a handful. And this way they get to hold one up and say, like, all right, you on the other side of the table, Sally, you have to tell me one thing that makes you angry. And everybody in the room will do that. And then everybody gets to eat an M&M. So it's really fun. It gets the whole room involved. Always want to preface this by saying look out for allergies and double check what the kids can and cannot eat. You might want to bring in some gummy bears, switch it up a little bit so that there's a variety. Even change it up. I'll even say for every red, talk about your favorite movie. That right there is a social skill in itself. Getting the kids to verbally express things that they enjoy, getting the other students to be a good audience and listen to what is occurring is also very helpful. And then you can start it back and forth. You can start, oh, well, so-and-so, that's his favorite movie too. Have you guys ever talked about that? So-and-so said this is the best movie, but, I think Pitch Perfect 2 is better than the first one. Maybe we should talk about that. And getting those kids involved in different conversations is always very helpful. All right. The next thing we like to do in order to get kids engaged and build up their interest, they become the teachers. So we call this teaching tutors. What does the kid know that they want to share? What does the student feel interested in that they want to teach you? You might not realize that in them teaching you, you are completely guiding the conversation and teaching them so much. I have a student who is teaching me chess. Being able to have that student sit back and be patient and understand how to explain to me is the biggest lesson. Teaching this student how to go from saying, move that piece there, to saying, pick up the pawn and move him the appropriate amount of spaces. That lesson right there is a huge skill. The student is definitely going to be interested because it's something they know. You're learning something. And you know what? Even if you do know how to do it, pretend. Pretend you don't. I've had students who come to me and want to talk about different superhero movies, and I'm like, all right, bring it on, kid. Let's talk about this. But I don't want to make the kid feel like I know more. So I'll get it wrong. I'll pretend like I don't know. I'll say Wolverine has 4 or 5 claws, even though in my heart I know that's completely wrong. But I want to get the kid to realize that they can help me. We're working together. While you're having the student teach you, definitely observe their speech. Pay attention to what they're saying and what they're doing, and all of that is definitely going to help you figure out what they need to work on as well. All right. The next question we had, and I kind of reworded a couple different questions into this one. What tools or things can I use or do to assist my mentee with his reading comprehension? Reading comprehension is definitely something that we're always working on with students. First thing you always want to find out, is this even the correct reading level? We mentioned earlier on grade level versus ability level, and I want to retouch on that. So if a student is in 8th grade, that doesn't necessarily mean they're able to read at an 8th grade level. Their ability level might be 5th, 4th, 3rd. So that's where you're going to want to make sure you're even doing the right lesson with them. Here's a chart that I utilize a lot. It's called the 5-finger rule. What you do is you hand a kid a book, a short story, anything. Have them open it up to one page, and as the student's reading under the table, I count on my fingers every time they hesitate on a word, they stutter, or they really don't know it. If at the end of that one page, you're holding up 0 or 1 fingers, they got this. That was easy for them. They read this page. If you're holding up 2 to 3 fingers, they might have had a little bit of issue, but they made it through, so this is something you want to work on. If you fill up that hand, this is probably going to stress the kid out after more than 1 or 2 pages. Pick a new book. That right there is going to help you even figure out if this book is something that the kid can and cannot read. You also want to try changing it up with fiction versus nonfiction. I excel personally at reading fiction. Nonfiction gets a little tricky for me, so I know that when I read nonfiction, I prefer different levels and stuff with more pictures, and because I know that, I've learned that for myself. And that is what you want to help the student learn about themselves. Teach them, are they more enjoyable or more invested when they're reading fiction versus when they're reading nonfiction. That as well is really going to help get them involved in what they're reading. You want to also incorporate long-term strategies that the student is going to utilize with or without you while they're reading. I am a big fan of highlighting. I do not utilize Kindles because I can't highlight it. It frustrates me that I can't do that. I can't write in the margins. So that's what works for me. I know others might not even enjoy writing in the book at all. It might become too distracting. Utilize many different strategies. Highlighting and note-taking. When you're taking notes, we use Post-its because sometimes you can't write in the book because they're from school. You got to write on the Post-it and put that Post-it on that page. It also works very well as bookmarks, so you can find the different areas faster. I have a student who's really big on color coding, so we do all of the people or who, what, where, when, and how. Those are different colors. So she might start a page with purple and end it in red because the purple was the conflict and the red was the resolution. So different things like that really help her. Margins. Writing in the margins is a big deal. Being able to just draw a line and connect individual quotes is helpful. You also want to question sporadically. Throughout the reading, I will rarely go more than 5 minutes reading with a student without stopping. I will always try to stop occasionally and question what we've read. I'll tell the student, can you summarize the last 2 pages? Can you clarify what this character did? So an example we can use, excuse me, would be a popular movie such as, let's go with The Lion King. So I would question the students, okay, can you just summarize what happened right now? Like, oh, well, Mufasa brought Simba and he was explaining to him what everything is what belongs to him and what's coming next. Okay, great. Now, can you clarify what's coming next? Oh, yeah, he was telling him that when Mufasa gets older and Simba's in charge, this land is going to belong to him. Okay, great. We got that. Let's keep going. So now we've clarified everything and we're keeping up instead of getting to the end of the story and saying, all right, what happened? That's really not going to bode well for the students. Also, different reading methods work better for different students. I cannot read out loud. When I'm reading out loud to others, I'm so focused on I'm saying it correctly that I'm not comprehending what I'm reading. I'm worried that everybody can hear me. I'm worried that it sounds good. So I get to the end of that paragraph and I was like, what did I just say? I need to read to myself. I can't listen when people are reading to me because if somebody's reading it to me, I will try to jump ahead. I will be honest. I'll try to jump ahead and I will be questioning when they're reading. I might get frustrated with their level. So for me, I need to read to myself. For a student, they might need you to read to them. For another one, they might need to have the story read to them like story time. That is definitely something that's always going to affect their comprehension. If they're not addressing the literature correctly, they're not going to comprehend the literature correctly. So being able to even figure out the best method is going to be very helpful for that student. And for yourself as well. If the student needs to read silently, great. Sit next to them and read alongside them and show them, I'm still here. Even if you just need to read to yourself, I still got your back. If you get to the end of the page and there's words you don't understand, I'm sitting right here while you're reading, and I will be here while you're reading. All right. When you're working with reading comprehension, in order to assess if the student is comprehending or not, there's various types of questioning that we've utilized before. You want to compare the story to something relatable. I'll have the student tell me a story, or reading a story, and it might have nothing to do with their personal life. So you want to find a way to adapt that story to fit them. Good old green eggs and ham. I love reading that with kindergartners, but I don't know a single kid who has openly gone to Denny's and ordered green eggs and ham because that's not something relatable. So being able to tell students, you guys know Burger King came out with that hamburger where the bun was black, or they make ketchup that's purple, and being able to show the kids and talk to them about things that adapt is a big deal. Even talking about candy, the different flavors, does it change the flavor because the color's different? You know, does a white gummy bear taste white? Does a clear gummy bear taste clear? Talking them, changing it to make it relatable to them is very helpful. Chronological order. When students are reading, things are happening, things are progressing. Then, as they get older, the stories change. Flashbacks occur. People think of the future. You got foreshadowing. So you want to make sure that the chronological order is helping them comprehend as well. Making sure that the steps make sense to the storyline helps. I will have students pull out all those Post-its that they wrote in their notes and put them out of order, and I have them re-put them in order. You might give the student index cards and say, write the 5 things that happened in the story and have them re-put it in the proper chronological order. Helping them understand the steps and the process that things are following is going to help them comprehend. Concrete and inferential. Concrete is when we stick with the who, what, where, when, and how, the stuff you can highlight and find in the paragraph. Inferential are those questions that are going to take you outside the story and beyond comprehension. That's going to be, okay, what happened next? Or, okay, the story ended like this. What if the character did this instead? So, the end of Lion King. What if Simba never came back? What if Nala hadn't found Simba? Would Nala have come and taken care of things? Being able to find different points of view to the story is going to be very helpful as well. Get it wrong. I'm a big fan on getting it wrong because this is how I know the student's even listening to me. So I will tell the student, all right, so what you're telling me is Simba was running around the plains and Scar and Pumbaa came and were hanging out with him. And if the student says yes, I know right away, I'll be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I thought Scar was the bad guy. Why was he hanging out with them? And they're like, oh, no, wait, it was Timon and Pumbaa. So getting the students to be able to correct you is a great way to see if they're paying attention, to see if they're focused, and to see if they're comprehending. Being able to correct someone is always a great way to show that you truly feel confident in your answer. All right. Right here is a little game that we play, a roll and chat. We can play this with any age level. You just change up the questions. It basically takes a pair of dice, and you can even make these with construction paper. You can find directions online to make dice, and you roll the dice. Whatever number comes up, that's what you guys do. This works great in group tutoring sessions because even if the kids come up with the same number, if I rolled a 1 and I sat there and told my favorite part of the story and explained why, the next student can then roll a 1. Their favorite part of the story might be different. We've then now found a point to ponder, a point of interest to talk about between the group. All right, well, let's see. Why was this part better than this part? Does anybody have an opinion? That's going to get the group rolling. If the questions are all completely different, that's great because I know for myself, when somebody's talking about their favorite part, I might also be thinking about my favorite part or how I would have answered. So even as an audience member not speaking, please know that the students are still in their head probably thinking, how might I have answered this question? Or, well, I didn't even think about that part when the student said it. Yeah, that part does sound a lot funnier or a lot more memorable. So even know that in group situations, if a kid's just sitting there, their brain's probably working on their own answers or contradicting, debating, or agreeing with the answer that's being said already. All right. One thing that we really enjoy doing is a Be an Author series. If the kids are having a hard time comprehending other people's work, have them write something. Have them write something that they're fully going to comprehend because it is all from their own mind. Student-told stories are a big deal because as a student telling a story, you can definitely question them. This is adorable when you're working with little kids because a kindergartner might start making up a story and say like, oh, well, the girl was walking down the street, and you can right away, how old was she? Then you're getting this kid to really build upon the visual, so when they're reading, they're going to learn to look out for these important facts. They're going to learn, oh, well, somebody's hearing my story. I might need to know these things when I'm reading somebody else's story. One sentence starters. These are actually really fun because all you need is a sentence. That's it. I'll write down a sentence that says, the giraffe escaped from the zoo and the zookeepers were nowhere to be found. That's all I'll give my student, and I'll say, go. They now have to write a story based on that one sentence. It's going to be really silly. It's going to get your imaginations going, and it's going to build in all of that comprehension that you're working on, because if they're not comprehending what they're writing, then it's not going to get written. So you're going to build questions onto that with the student in order to get them to comprehend where their thought process is going. Help guide their thought process. Movie plots. Kids love watching movies. They might not realize that almost every movie they're watching was a book first, or some type of story. Every Disney movie was some type of fairy tale, and they might not realize that. So being able to take a movie that the kids really respect or really know and understand, and being able to find a literary version of that, or having the kid write their own literary version of that story, is going to really immensely help with comprehension, because they have that visual already that comes along. They know what the conflict's going to be. They know how the stories were solved. So they're able to take that visual and put it into words, and that will forever help them with the other words that they're going to be reading. Picture expansion. This one's really great for older students as well, and it's great for an emotional activity and getting to know your student's thought process and where their mindset is. Picture expansion is super easy. I will print out or find a picture of anything in the world. It could be silly, it could be actual, it could be nonfiction, it could be made up, it could be anything. And I'll just hand it to the student and say, explain this to me. A picture is worth 1,000 words. Write down those words. And I'll have the student tell me, who is this? Why are they standing here? Who even took this picture? Why would this picture need to be taken? And just getting that one picture to fuel their imagination is going to build on all of that comprehension. They are inventing the who, why, when, what, and how of that picture. How did it get taken? Why was it taken? What was the point? All of those little things are a big deal. All right. We also have this activity when you do have to do reading that the teacher has given you. Okay. There's this that you could work on. It's an after reading spinner. So it's definitely going to utilize, you just put a paper clip and a pencil and you spin the paper clip, and it's going to be able to give you different topics to talk about. All right. This one real quick is a couple examples for game boards that you can use as motivation for the students while they're working. Each game board is broken down, so you can adapt these to fit any student and activity. Excuse me. Each board could represent a question, a paragraph, a story, and it's basically showing the progression of what the students can and cannot do. All right. I only have a few more minutes. So quickly, I'm going to go over this topic real quick about bullying that was addressed. This presentation is going to be available, so I really want to show you these two worksheets that we utilize a lot. First thing we want to do is address the situation. Is it even bullying? You know, is this something that needs to be addressed? Because making a big deal out of certain situations might exacerbate an issue. So there's a worksheet right here. Is it bullying? You're going to want to look that over to kind of identify the multiple different methods of bullying. Remember that bullying is teachable at any moment. You're utilizing social skills and facial cues to help kids understand each other and to read each other. And you want to quickly acknowledge the situation but move on as fast as possible so that you teach the kids to be resilient. This worksheet right here is a really quick acronym that we use to remind students if what they're saying is even healthy to the conversation and useful to the conversation. So just being able to answer these questions, and I will use these questions to the student and say, okay, what you just said, was that helpful to the conversation? Was that even necessary? Is that on your homework? And getting the kids to understand. Some more little tips right here that you guys can review over, just a little strengthening on what we're talking about, and a verbal description of the visual. Right here we had some last minute requests for websites that can be addressed for older students. Betterlesson.com right here is a website where you can pull up worksheets for any grade level and any framework. Career Zone is one thing you can use really easily for older students in order to help them find what they are interested in. It has personality quizzes and vocational quizzes to help them get to know who they are and who they can be. Teenink.com is a great website to address for those high-low worksheets. All of these articles on Teen Inc. are written by teens for teens, so your students can actually submit work as well. And a big thing all students and tutors can utilize is video games. Kids love video games. Always change video games to adapt to math. So if you play a game at the end of that level, I'll have the students write down their score and tell them they can't play the next level until they multiply that score by 5. Tell them they can't play the next level until they figured out how many coins they need to get to 1,000,000. You know, being able to use what the kids already like and know is going to be super, super helpful to keeping the kids interested, motivated, and engaged. On that note, I would like to thank you guys for listening.
Thank you so much, Allison. Does anybody have any questions? We do have just a minute. If anybody does have questions, you can send them to us and we will get back to you with answers. Well, looks like one question came in. Oh, just a thank you. Thank you. Thank you for listening in, Lisa. We appreciate it very much and we hope that it was helpful for you. And again, if you do have further questions, feel free to